One day, you catch yourself in the mirror, run your fingers through your hair, and think, what the hell happened? Your hair feels a little thinner, your scalp is showing, and a little bit of panic sets into that stomach. So you go online, type in hair loss or why am I losing hair? And you're hit with a flood of advice. Minoxidil, alopecia, genetics, lifestyle, and random hair products. So you wonder, am I even using the right shampoo or my products making things even worse? And at the end of all of that searching, you're still stuck asking, can I save my hair or is it even worth trying? If that's you, then this video is exactly what you need. In just this one video, you'll learn everything about hair, what hair really is and how it ages, how to avoid going bald, which shampoos to avoid, the best hair oil in the world, undoubtedly. And we'll also break down the truth about drugs like minoxidil, finasteride, dutasteride, both the topical version and the oral version. We're also going to look through treatments like microneedling and PRP, and also cover hair supplements like biotin. And as a bonus, I'll share two life-changing scales with you: the scalp balance scale to optimize your scalp for growth, and the hair growth scale of risk and reward, which ranks every single treatment, drug, and supplement by both the results it gives you and the risks that it poses. By the end of this video, you'll have everything that you need to take control of your hair and keep it for the long run. So stick around, because saving your hair starts now. Now, let me be honest. Most of the men on both sides of my family are bald. So I know what it feels like when you lose hair. It's scary to most of you and annoying to a few, especially if you're not that tall or confident about having good facial features to begin with. But even with most of the men on both my sides of the family going bald, I've been able to grow this long, thick, jet black hair. And that's why I decided to make this video. Even though hair is something that all of us can live without, it's something that we don't want to live without. Now, that being said, there is only one way you can rise above all the hair growth scams and false propaganda in this space to make you a victim of false hair products. And how do we do that? By understanding, number one, what hair is made of, and number two, what actually makes it grow and fall in the first place. And of course, number three, what are the safest and most effective ways to regrow a scalp full of hair? Having said that, let's answer the first question of the day. Why do humans have hair in the first place? There are actually two reasons for this. Number one, evolutionary adaptation. We grew hair on our head simply because we needed to avoid our scalp from getting sunburnt or overheated in the sun, particularly from UV rays. And number two, natural selection. As you already know, hair has been linked with beauty, good health, and attractiveness in many cultures all around the world. And as a result of that, most people who had the choice to choose their partner, not many did, but those who had the choice were more likely to choose those with good genetics. Now, obviously, I know you're not here to learn about hair to protect your scalp from UV radiation. You're here because your hair has become a part of your identity and you'd like to live your life with a head full of it. And for that, you need to know, what is your hair made of in the first place? Hair is basically made of a protein called keratin. And keratin is basically made from amino acids that we get from our regular diet. But if everybody's hair is made of the same material, why do Asians, Caucasians, and Africans have different types of hair and hair color? That's actually because of two reasons. Number one, melanin content. Which type of melanin you have determines what hair color you'll have. Black and brown shades are produced by a version of melanin called eumelanin, while blonde and red hair are produced by another version of melanin called pheomelanin. And number two, hair shape and structure. Africans have curled hair because the shape of their hair cuticle is oval, which causes it to curl, while Asians have round-shaped hair cuticles, making them straight in nature. So now that you understand why different parts of the globe have different types of hair, shape, and structure, this brings us to an extremely important question. How do I reduce or even stop my hair fall? And for that, you need to understand what makes hair fall in the first place. Now, if you didn't know already, hair fall is actually a natural part of growing, shedding, and regrowing hair. And to make it simple for you, now imagine you plant a seed in the soil. The seed starts to grow, and a little flower begins to sprout and get taller and taller every day. This is like your hair growing out of your head, and this growth phase of hair is called the anagen phase. After a while, the flower stops growing taller. It's still there and it looks pretty, but it's not getting any bigger. This is like your hair stopping its growth but still staying on your head. This phase of transition is called the catagen phase. Now, the flower is just resting and waiting to fall off. It's grown to a point where its petals have lost color and become a little loose, but it's still in the garden. This is like your hair resting and staying on your head after it's grown out fully. That's when your scalp enters the telogen phase, a phase of rest. And finally, the flower lets go of its petals and falls off, making room for a new seed to be planted and a new flower to grow. This part where your hair falls out from its place is called the exogen phase, a phase where hair shedding happens. And everyone's hair grows, regrows, and sheds all the time. But how long do each of these phases last? Typically, for a healthy individual, the anagen phase, as in the growth phase, can last over 3 to 5 years. And for some people, it may even last over 7 years. Generally, about 90% of your hair is in the anagen phase at any given point of time. Then comes the catagen phase, a phase of transition. And only around 5% of your hair is generally in the catagen phase, which means that if you're a healthy individual, you should be growing more hair than losing it. Which brings me to the telogen phase. That phase usually lasts up to 3 months, and roughly 10 to 15% of your scalp is in this phase. Then finally comes the phase of shedding, the exogen phase, which can last from around 2 to 5 months. And losing 100 to 150 hairs per day is considered to be normal. So at any given point of time, all the hair on your head is going to go through one of these 4 phases. But if you're healthy, most of your hair is going to go through the anagen phase. But now, having said that, here's something important that you need to know. How does your hair age? Now, as we grow past our late 20s, our hair begins to get thinner, you tend to lose color over time, and in fact, most of you that had curly hair will notice that either it's gotten less curlier or become more brittle. And over time, your scalp gets less and less dense, and eventually you lose most, if not all of the hair on your head. But why is that? Many factors affect how fast your hair is growing, how quickly your hair is falling, and the quality of hair that you grow. And here are 3 main reasons that makes your hair fall. Number 1, genetic factors. Now, when I say genetic factors, I'm talking about that receding hairline, the thinning of the crown in men, and the thinning of the top in women. Now, androgenic alopecia, the scientific name for pattern baldness, happens because of a hormone called DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Now, I want you to think of DHT as a little villain that makes our hair follicles, the tiny parts of our skin that grow hair, get smaller and weaker. Now, when these follicles shrink, they can't grow thick, strong hair anymore. And eventually, they might stop growing hair at all. That's like when a plant doesn't have enough water and starts to wither away. Now, this whole process is often passed down from our parents, and we end up inheriting it like our eye color or our height. Now, the second reason that accelerates hair fall is number 2, nutritional deficiencies and diet. What you eat directly influences your overall hair health and your follicle thickness. And in the case of growing healthy hair, your body needs 3 essential components, and we'll get into those towards the end, where we'll talk in detail about the hair growth scale of risk and reward. But having said that, it's not a surprise to note that number 3 is stress and medical conditions. Now, this may sound obvious, but that doesn't mean it's not important. Stress and medical conditions force more of your hair follicles to undergo the telogen phase, making it thinner and grow slower than it usually does. The scientific term for this type of hair loss is called telogen effluvium. Luckily, a lot of this type of hair fall is reversible. So how is that? Like I said, we'll take a look at that when we reach the hair growth scale of risk and reward. But now that you know the three main reasons why most of hair fall happens, here are three most common types of balding, so you can tell which type of balding is happening in your scalp. Number one, androgenic alopecia, also the most common type of hair loss affecting 80% of men and 42% of women worldwide. The easiest way to check is to just wash your hair, pick up the hair that falls on the floor, and stick it on the wall with water. If you see that some hairs are far thinner than the others, then you're most likely to have some level of androgenic alopecia. That's because thinning of some hair follicles is a classic sign of androgenic alopecia. Now, you can confirm this by looking at your genetics on either side of the family. So, if your dad or your mom's side, your granddad has no hair, then it's most likely that you have androgenic alopecia. But here's some research that most experts don't discuss. Studies done on 92 male identical twins showed that one of the twins had more hair loss than the other. Now, if we assume that both of them had almost identical hair gene, how did one twin lose more hair than the other? Which brings me to the second type of balding, telogen effluvium. Unlike androgenic alopecia, telogen effluvium is more widespread out around the scalp, which means that you'll see thinning in different areas of the scalp, not just the crown or the temples, like androgenic alopecia. And like the name suggests, telogen effluvium is mainly due to more of your hair follicles going into the telogen phase, as in the phase which they rest and get ready to fall out. Now, this could happen if you're sick, stressed, ill, or have sudden hormonal changes. But luckily, this is almost fully reversible. After a few days of recovering from sickness, reducing stress levels, and eating right, you'll begin to see that some of your hair has started to grow back in the next 3 to 6 months. And we'll get into what are the top 3 foods that help you regrow hair later in this video. But if you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, then you'll want to hear about this next type of balding, senescence alopecia. This type of balding has no particular cause except for the fact that we're growing older and our hair is getting thinner. Now listen, the biggest mistake most balding people make is that they immediately start using drugs like minoxidil and finasteride instead of actually understanding what type of baldness they're going through. So if you're genetically predisposed to balding, in other terms, you have androgenic alopecia, otherwise known as pattern baldness, then it's all right to start with treatments for your hair, of course, with the consent of your doctor. But if you have telogen effluvium, which is basically baldness caused mainly by poor lifestyle or illness, improve your sleep, diet, and start to exercise first. Your hair will most likely grow back without any of these extra drugs. And having said that, if you've already been diagnosed with pattern baldness and you've seen folks in your family go bald, visit your nearest doctor and get advice on what treatments to use. The biggest misconception that people have about hair loss is that they believe that any changes in their body or lifestyle will affect their hair immediately. So for example, let's say you fixed your diet and sleep. Most people will think that this change will immediately affect the hair that's currently on your head. But that is far from true, because that's not how it works. Whatever consistent changes you make now will affect the coming hair cycle, not the current one. So if you fixed your diet and sleep, and the hair that grows out from the next cycle will be what benefits from the changes you make now. Which brings me to my next point. A lot of famous hair treatments don't work. In fact, only a few work well with little side effects. So here are the most famous treatments for hair fall and why they're famous. Number 1, minoxidil. If you're someone who's Googled hair fall solutions, minoxidil is on the first of that list that you would have stumbled across. Minoxidil was basically developed for patients with high blood pressure as a vasodilator. Wait, what the fuck does that mean? A vasodilator is basically anything that opens or dilates blood vessels. But during the experiment where they used minoxidil, they found that it helped people regrow some of the hair they'd lost. So, with some basic modifications, they made it a hair growth serum. And it seems to be working for at least most of the people that use it. In fact, there was a study done on 393 men with androgenic alopecia where they were split into three groups. The first group applied 5% minoxidil twice a day. The second group applied 2% minoxidil for twice a day. And the third group was basically just placebo. And after 48 weeks, they saw that the group that used 5% minoxidil was far superior than those that used the 2% minoxidil or the placebo group in terms of growth. But does that mean that you should use minoxidil? I highly recommend you consult a dermatologist or even a trichologist before you do so, because anything that has positive effects can have side effects too. But minoxidil is one of those drugs that are clinically proven to be safe for at least majority of the population. You can either take minoxidil topically, as in apply it on your scalp, or you can take it orally as a pill. But which is safer and which is more effective? Topical minoxidil, as in the minoxidil that we put on top of our hair, is safer and has more localized effects when compared to oral minoxidil. But some people get recommended by their doctors to take the oral pill. So again, make sure to consult your dermat. And now, having said that, let's move to the next hair growth treatment. Finasteride, another popular medicine that would have popped up on your screen if you Googled hair loss. Finasteride basically blocks out the DHT by inhibiting an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, which stops testosterone from breaking down into DHT. But are there any studies to prove that finasteride works in reducing male or female pattern baldness? Of course. A study performed on 1,553 men showed significant results in improvement of both hair volume and overall hair thickness. And not just that, multiple studies across different populations have proven that it works. In fact, finasteride is considered to be one of the most effective hair treatments to regrow your hair. But there's one reason why you shouldn't use finasteride. There is a small population of people, around 5% of people, that have faced decreased libido and erectile dysfunction while using this drug. So please make sure to speak to a medical professional before using it. But here's where things get really interesting. Scientists believe that finasteride was the strongest drug we had at our disposal for hair growth until they found this drug. And now this hair growth drug is considered to be the best hair growth drug in the world in terms of its effects. Dutasteride. Compared to other hair growth drugs like finasteride, dutasteride is considered to be almost 10 times as potent in regrowing hair. And this study showed that 0.5 milligrams of oral dutasteride had better results than both 5 milligrams of finasteride and 5% minoxidil. But then why isn't your doctor recommending dutasteride instead of other drugs like minoxidil? Listen, because this is really important. Dutasteride, like finasteride, has shown to lead to erectile dysfunction, a decrease in libido, and a decrease in sperm count. But that's generally only for 5% of population of people who take it. So I do recommend that you make your own decisions and be smart. But with that being said, there's one last supplement that most people use for hair loss called biotin. Biotin for hair growth is a scam unless you have a severe biotin deficiency. There is barely any clinical evidence to prove that biotin helps in hair growth, and neither has it been proven to help in increasing hair thickness like finasteride. Which brings me to the last, yet one of the most effective treatments in hair fall history, microneedling. Microneedling is basically using a derma roller that creates a small amount of puncture on your head, which then improves blood flow to the scalp, which then results in a repair response, which leads to increased hair growth. Now, trust me, this isn't nearly as painful as it sounds. You can find needles straight from 0.25 mm to 2.5 mm. But which size of needle should you use? A recent study found that the ideal microneedling length is capped at around 0.5 mm. Anything more than that generally has longer recovery cycles, which slows down hair growth overall. But it is important to note that microneedling also helps make other treatments like topically applying minoxidil and finasteride way more effective. But why is that? Research shows that microneedling helps topical solutions like minoxidil or finasteride go deeper into the scalp, hence making it more effective. In fact, a study comparing topical minoxidil, as in the minoxidil you put on your scalp, along with microneedling versus just topical minoxidil showed that hair growth was far more in the group that combined both minoxidil and microneedling when compared to just topically applying minoxidil alone. But how much more effective is it? Almost 4 times more effective. The mean increase in hair count at week 12 of this experiment was significantly greater for the microneedling group when compared to that of just the minoxidil group. Now, having said that, here's the most useless and expensive hair treatment there is: PRP, short for plasma rich platelet therapy. So, your blood is made of red blood cells and plasma. So, doctors separate the plasma from your blood and inject it into your head. But why is that? Basically, PRP or plasma rich platelet therapy gained popularity because it was used in sports to treat injuries by using someone's plasma to improve their healing a little bit quicker by injecting it into that area. But sadly, that therapy for hair regrowth is a scam. It costs thousands of dollars per sitting, requires multiple sittings to show a basic result that a $20 derma roller can get you. So it's basically a bored surgeon's dream, but a broke patient's nightmare. But Samarth, are there any natural sources that we can use to improve our hair growth? Actually, there is. It's called rosemary oil. You must have heard of this before. But why is rosemary oil effective? And how effective is it compared to other drugs like minoxidil? Well, a study comparing the effectiveness of rosemary oil versus 2% minoxidil solution showed that both of them had similar results when it came to hair growth after applying it for 6 months straight. But why does rosemary oil work? Rosemary oil works because it increases the blood flow into the scalp, which then promotes hair growth. So if rosemary oil works, does that mean that every other oil works as well? Not really. There are actually a lot of myths around coconut oil or castor oil working for hair growth, but sadly, there isn't enough scientific evidence to prove that it works. And if you've tried it and it seems to work for you, it probably has more to do with the fact that massaging your head increases blood flow to the scalp, which then improves your hair growth, not because you're using a particular type of oil. But with that being said, here's undoubtedly the best oil for your scalp, hair, and skin at zero cost. Sebum. No, not Mr. Olympia. Sebum. Sebum, your natural hair and scalp oil. Too little of it can damage your scalp, and too much of it can also damage your scalp. But the right amount can make your hair, scalp, and even your face flourish. And it's something your body already produces. It's called sebum. If you have oily skin and scalp, then you already have seen and felt what I'm talking about. Now imagine if I told you that in order to grow more hair and better quality hair and beard, all you needed to do is optimize your sebum secretion. Actually, you don't need to imagine, because that is the case. Instead of spending so much of your time applying oil every day to your hair, eat the right kind of food to either increase or decrease sebum production. So how do you know how much sebum is enough for your face and for your scalp? And if you already know your skin is too oily or too dry, what are you supposed to eat to bring it to normal? And we'll cover the answers to both of those questions later in this video, so make sure to stay focused. But for now, here's a question you definitely want to know the answer to. Which shampoo should I use? My barber tells me to use products of the company he works for. Influencers promote what pays them, and shampoo companies always promise that their product is the best product. So which do I choose? Let's take a look at the top 5 non-herbal shampoos that most people use worldwide. Clinic Plus, Tresemme, Sunsilk, Head and Shoulders, and of course, Dove. Now, having listed these shampoos, I have to say that the dosage makes the poison. All of these shampoos obviously contain harmful chemicals like sodium lauryl sulfate, synthetic fragrances, and silicones that can cause irritation and damage your scalp. But it can be beneficial in cleaning your scalp from the oils that it produces and the dust that gets stuck onto the oil that your scalp has produced. Now, remember, all these chemicals are put under small doses to keep them safe for public use. If you've used any of these brands and felt any kind of itching on your scalp, it's recommended that you consult with your dermatologist on what to do next. A general alternative to these commonly used shampoos are herbal or organic shampoos. But sadly, these shampoos have some harmful chemicals that are used as a preservative as well. But like I said, the dosage always makes the poison. And one practice that I use for myself is to always use a little bit of shampoo and mix it with cold water before I rinse my hair with it, rather than directly applying a thick piece of shampoo onto my scalp, because it's very hard to clean that off. But if you're one of those people who hate synthetic shampoos because you think all chemicals are terrible for your skin, one organic shampoo that I use is Cuddy Natural Herbal Shampoo. Now, I'm not sponsored by them, but you can see for yourself in the ingredients and figure out that it's more natural than pretty much any of the other shampoos that I just listed above. However, I'm not sure if it's available worldwide, so find shampoos that don't have or have at least lesser amount of chemicals like sodium lauryl sulfate, phthalates, and other synthetic chemicals that may cause irritation to your scalp. And we'll get into other hair care products and serums in another video. But for now, let's talk about the most optimal hair growth routine there is in terms of both diet and practice. So let's start off with diet first. Here are three main things that you need to have in your diet for better hair growth. Number one, omega-3 fatty acids, one of the most well-researched supplements in the entire world. Omega-3 fatty acids are extremely helpful for hair growth and replenishment. I've taken omega-3s for years now, and every time I've been off of them for even over a month, my hair tends to lose a little bit of the luster that it has. Number two, protein. Our entire body, including our hair, is made of protein. There's no study to prove that eating more protein will increase your hair growth, but eating less protein than your body requires, which is 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, can slow down your hair growth. And number three, micronutrients and minerals like vitamin D, zinc, and iron. A study looking at 40 women going through telogen effluvium, a form of temporary hair loss, saw a statistically significant increase in hair growth as they increased their vitamin D intake to 200,000 IU every 2 weeks compared to the placebo group. And to give you a reference, the usual vitamin D3 supplement that is prescribed by doctors when you have a deficiency is usually around 60,000 IU weekly or once in 10 days. And here's where it gets interesting. More than 82% of women out of those 40 women saw an improvement in their hair growth after taking the vitamin D supplement. This is one of the many studies to show that if you're vitamin D deficient, you've already lost more hair than you should have, which will grow back once you're back on the vitamin D supplements. But that being said, taking more vitamin D than you need, if you are not deficient of it, will not cause more hair gain. So be careful before randomly going around and popping vitamin D pills. And the same goes for all other vitamins and minerals that companies claim will stop hair loss. If you do not have a deficiency, then you won't grow extra hair by taking more of any vitamin or mineral. So iron, zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D, or any other vitamin and mineral will not help you regrow hair if you are not deficient of it. And now that we've got that out of the way, here's the $1,000,000 question. Can I improve my hair growth simply by optimizing my body's natural oil production? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. Your body's natural hair oil, also called sebum, is the best oil there is when it comes to growing and maintaining your hair. And forget about making your hair awesome. Did you know that your natural hair oil helped fight bacteria, stopped you from getting dehydrated, and also played a role in helping humans adapt to harsh weather conditions for hundreds of thousands of years. And that's why your body's natural oil, sebum, is the best oil for your body in the entire world, so far at least. But how do we optimize this sebum? And this is where I introduce you to the scalp balance scale, a scale that covers all scalps straight from the driest of scalp all the way to the oiliest of scalps. And as we go along the scale, I want you to see which part of the scale you think you fall under so we can drastically improve your hair through improving your sebum production. Now, that being said, let's get right into it. We start off with the left side of the scale with level 1, Sahara dry. So that's an extremely dry scalp characterized by flaking, itchiness, and the feeling of tightness. If this is you, then your hair may feel brittle and you're often dealing with dandruff, which brings us to level 2, arid dry. And in this case, it's a dry scalp with occasional flakiness. Most people feel itchiness like the previous level, but less intense. And in most cases, the scalp may feel rough and the hair lacks luster, as in that shine that some people have on their hair. Which brings us to level 3, balance. If this is you, then you are lucky because you have a healthy, balanced scalp with no significant dryness or oiliness. Your hair is shiny and soft with at least no noticeable scalp issues. Which brings us to level 4, light oil. If this is you, then you'll notice that the scalp begins to produce more oil, leading to slight shininess and possibly greasy hair. So by the end of the day, if you don't wash it, it becomes a little bit sticky, which brings us to level 5, which is oily. In this case, the scalp is visibly oily, often leading to limp, greasy hair, and in many instances, your pores may feel clogged, and you may have chances of getting scalp acne and dandruff. Which brings me to the last level, level 6, super oily. Someone with an extremely oily scalp with symptoms like persistent dandruff, scalp odor, and potential hair loss due to clogged pores. And most of the time, your scalp feels greasy to touch shortly after washing it. Now, if you're close to an extremely dry scalp or even an extremely oily scalp, it's highly likely that your hair quality is already getting damaged because of it. So step 1 is to identify if you actually have a dry or oily scalp, or it may even be balanced. And once you've identified your scalp type, you need to understand that if you have a dry scalp, you need to hydrate and eat foods that increase sebum production. And if you have an oily scalp, you need to reduce certain foods that increase sebum production or increase foods that reduce sebum production. So to start off with, let's take a look at the top 4 foods for increasing your body's natural oil and get rid of dry scalp. Number 1, fatty fish and other seafood. These types of foods are high in both omega-3 fatty acids and zinc, which are both extremely important for sebum production. Number 2, red meat. Red meat has saturated fatty acids, which are known to help increase sebum production. Which brings me to number 3, nuts and seeds. These are full of healthy fats, and nuts and seeds can really help boost your sebum, leading to better hair. Number 4, dairy. Eating dairy is proven to increase overall sebum production in the skin. And number 5, hydration. Drink water. That's it. And by eating these foods, your body will produce more sebum, assuring that your scalp becomes a better place for hair growth. But remember, if you have a dry scalp but an oily face or a face with acne, it's important that you consult your dermatologist before doing anything else. And in the opposite case, if you're someone with a dry scalp and extremely dry skin, it's important to check your water, vitamin, and mineral intake because that's usually what causes dry skin in the first place. But what if you're on the other end of the scale? What if your scalp is extremely oily? Then you need to eat foods that reduce sebum production or decrease foods that increase sebum production to help you regulate your body's natural oil. And so, here's how you do that. Number 1, reduce your overall consumption of sugar and high glycemic index carbs. High glycemic index carbs, as in white rice, white bread, and maida, these types of carbs have proven to increase sebum production. Number 2, eating lean protein. Choose lean meat over fatty meat, like chicken breast, egg whites, whey isolate powders, and soya chunks. Remember how we discussed that if you have a dry scalp, saturated fatty acids from meat will help with sebum production? Yeah. So less saturated fatty acids in your diet, the less likely your skin is going to be oily. And number 3, hydration. Drink water. Seriously. If your skin is dehydrated, no amount of any oil or moisturizer or chemical will work on you. With that being said, here's one hair loss fact that most people will never consider. Dirty pillows and mattresses. All the sweat, dead skin cells, and oil from your face and scalp get absorbed into your pillow and mattress, making it a breeding ground for bacteria. So it's obvious to say, make sure you change your sheets at least once a week and wash your pillows at least 4 times a year. Now that you know exactly where you lie on the scalp balance scale, here's the one scale that reveals the quickest and the slowest way to regrow your hair and the risks you need to know about both. The hair scale of risk and reward. And what I've done is cumulated all the research around these treatments that we just discussed and graded them on a scale of 0 to 5 for both reward and risk. Now look, the bigger the reward, the higher the risk. Just like the stock market, cryptocurrency, marriage, and even making career choices, you will notice that it's the same here as well. The higher you go up on the scale, the more likely you are to grow back your hair quicker. But you are also more likely to feel certain side effects, especially as you get on to the red part of the scale. Having said that, the hair scale of risk and reward. Let's start off with the most effective and risky hair growth solution, oral dutasteride. This gets a 5 on 5 on the reward scale and 4 on 5 on the risk scale. But why is that? Because it's extremely effective for hair regrowth, but comes with a high risk of side effects, including potential sexual dysfunction and reproduction issues. Now, dutasteride taken in oral form is probably the strongest hair growth treatment we've discovered if we're talking about using just one chemical instead of a combination of a few. Now, having said that, there are many studies linking to sexual and reproductive side effects with dutasteride. Now, next on the scale is oral finasteride. This gets a 4 on 5 on the reward scale and a 4 on 5 on the risk scale. Now, why is that? Because it's very effective in treating hair loss, similar to dutasteride, but it includes a lot of issues such as dutasteride, like sexual and reproductive side effects. And next, we move to a different way to apply dutasteride, which brings us to topical dutasteride. Now, this gets a 4.5 on the reward scale and a 3.5 on the risk scale. But why is that? Because it's a good alternative to oral dutasteride, slightly less risk, but slightly less effective, and similar systemic side effects. So the next obvious item on the scale is topical finasteride. And this gets a 4 on 5 on the reward scale and a 3 on 5 on the risk scale. And why is that? Because it provides good results with fewer systemic side effects than oral finasteride, making it a safer option for long-term use. And now that we've covered both finasteride and dutasteride, let's move to oral minoxidil. Now, this gets a 3 on 5 on the reward scale and a 3 on 5 on the risk scale. Now, why is that? Because it's moderately effective for hair regrowth with some cardiovascular risks that need to be monitored. So if you're still concerned about taking oral pills, here's the next option, topical minoxidil. Now, this gets a 3 on 5 on the reward scale and a 2 on 5 on the risk scale. But why is that? Because it's widely used and mostly considered safe, especially effective in early stage hair loss, although it requires a consistent amount of use to maintain results that it gives. But if you're still concerned of the overall health risks, here's what you can consider. Microneedling. Now, this gets a 3 on 5 on the reward scale, but a 1 on 5 on the risk scale. And why is that? Because it's a low risk option that can enhance the effectiveness of other treatments, but it's primarily beneficial when combined with minoxidil. But if you've heard of microneedling, then you must have heard of PRP, platelet-rich plasma therapy. I give this a 0 on 5 on the reward scale and a 4 on 5 on the risk scale. Now, why is that? Because it's not at all effective and extremely expensive. And that brings me to another scam in the hair growth industry, biotin supplements. This gets a 0 on 5 on the reward scale and a 1 on 5 on the risk scale. And that's mainly because it's generally safe to use unless you have too much biotin, but of no reward unless you are biotin deficient. Which brings me to the last item on the risk and reward scale, rosemary oil. This gets a 2 on 5 on the reward scale and a 1 on 5 on the risk scale. And now, why is that? Because it's a natural option with minimal risk, but the results are modest compared to the pharmaceutical treatments. And like I've mentioned before, using a combination of microneedling with minoxidil and finasteride is the general combination of treatments that most people notice results in. But with that being said, you're free to use whichever treatment based on your doctor's approval and based on your risk appetite. So now that you've understood how to diagnose your scalp, fix your diet for optimal hair growth, and learned about all the popular drugs for hair loss in the market, let me answer this burning question in most people's head. Is there a way for you to turn your gray hairs into black without any treatment or using dyes? And this is something that scientists have been trying to do since decades. So let's take a look at some of their work. A study published in 2020 showed that graying isn't just because of genetics, but can happen due to continuous stress. So are there any studies showing that by reducing stress, we can reverse our graying? Actually, yes. This study published in 2021 showed that individuals who reported a drop in stress levels saw repigmentation of hair. But this study only proves that reversing of gray hair is only temporary. Most people begin to get their first few gray hairs by 35, and most people have half their hair turn gray by 65, if at all they have a head full of hair by 65. And on a personal note, I think gray hair is really cool. I don't think you should dye it to hide your age. Instead, I think you should just improve your overall hair thickness and volume naturally by eating an optimal diet. But that's just me. Now, having said that, here are the 5 key learnings from every single thing we've gone through so far. Number 1, understanding hair and scalp health is crucial. Your hair health begins with understanding your scalp. Using tools like the scalp balance scale, you can diagnose whether your scalp is dry, balanced, or oily, and adjust your care routine accordingly. Now, this foundational step is essential for creating an environment where your hair can thrive. Number 2, tailored hair growth strategies increases effectiveness. Now, not all treatments work the same for everyone. The hair growth scale of risk and reward helps you determine the best approach based on how much risk you're willing to take and the results you're looking for. Now, this ensures you're choosing treatments that align with your goals, whether it's basic maintenance or aggressive regrowth. Number 3, consistency and patience are keys to success. Hair growth is a long-term commitment. Whether you're using natural methods, pharmaceuticals, or a combination of both, consistency in your routine is vital. Expect to see results over months, not weeks, and adjust your approach based on your scalp's response. Number 4, beware of myths and misinformation. The hair loss space is filled with myths and ineffective treatments. Understanding the real science behind hair growth, from the actual effectiveness of products like minoxidil and finasteride to scams like PRP, empowers you to make informed decisions and avoids wasting your time. Number 5, stress management plays a significant role in hair growth. Stress is a major factor in hair loss and can even contribute to graying. And addressing stress through lifestyle changes, such as incorporating relaxation techniques and maintaining a balanced diet, not only improves your overall well-being, but positively impacts your hair growth. So there you have it. Everything you need to know about hair growth, from science-backed treatments to natural remedies and diet tips. And remember, like I've said a million times before, consult a professional before starting treatment. And as always, take care of yourself from the inside out. And I'm just curious to know, what is your biggest hair concern right now? Drop it in the comments below and let's get a conversation going, because I am curious to know if I've missed anything in this video. And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the aging of muscles. What is the best way to gain muscle after your 40s, 50s, or 60s? How do you permanently eradicate diabetes, and how I permanently eradicated diabetes from my clients? Why cutting out sugar and increasing your walks is the wrong way to lose weight? And what are the mistakes that most 40 to 60-year-olds make that leave them injured or give them lifestyle diseases? And besides that, we're also going to be covering how trainers scam people for money, how to tell if someone is on steroids or not, and we're also going to give you a hidden bonus that I will reveal in the next video. So make sure to hit that notification bell, and I will see you in the next video.